Mr. Secretary, are you familiar with the Silk Road Initiative,
Of course.
as it's called? Can you tell me sort of what the status of that is, number one, and your frank opinion on how realistic this initiative is in the short term, and how you see this developing, and how long you think it will take to truly turn Afghanistan into a trade and energy hub. And I would like to add to that whether you see long-term opportunities for United States companies to be a participant in that. Lord knows we have invested a lot of money and blood and treasure there, and we certainly should be at the table.
Thank you for that important question, sir. First of all, I should say the New Silk Road is really more of a vision. It's not a specific initiative. And I also should say that this is not something that we are asking Congress to appropriate large amounts of money for. Most of the funds for this regional integration effort is going to come from international financial institutions, of which we pay a portion of their budget. I mentioned earlier the important work that the Asia Development Bank is doing, but also importantly from the countries themselves. And as I said in my opening remarks, the heart of the vision is how are we going to create economic opportunity for Afghanistan, for the people of Afghanistan after 2014. There's obviously great concern that as military forces begin to pull out, a lot of the spending that they are now responsible for will go with them, and that will have an impact on the Afghan economy. And that in turn could lead to loss of economic opportunity. So we've got to find a way to replace that. And the best way to do that is to build up the private sector in Afghanistan. Afghanistan remains a very poor and underdeveloped country. So our view and Afghanistan's view is that the best way to encourage private sector development is to encourage regional integration. So we and the countries of the region are embarked on this vision to develop the roads, the rails, the electricity transmission networks, the pipelines, and all of the other infrastructure that will be needed to help promote regional integration. And I would say what's most important about this is that the countries of the region themselves have embraced this. Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and many of the other countries, because they see the logic of this. The Chinese see that it makes much more sense for them to export directly via Kazakhstan and ship things straight through Kazakhstan and into Europe than to ship things all the way around at a much higher cost and much longer. Likewise, the Russians understand that there's a tremendous benefit to them going straight through Uzbekistan to the markets of Turkey and beyond. And so there are many, many examples of that. And as the Chairman said in his opening statement, Central Asia is right in the center of all of those. So if they can just get those incentives right and open up the infrastructure and reduce the obstacles, not only will Central Asia benefit, but the Afghans will benefit. And that's in our interest.
I want to ask one more question. My time's running low related to this. It seems we have a inconsistent history of leveraging our involvement and our investment and our spending and our blood as well as our treasure to make sure that once the marketplace is sort of constructed or relatively operational, that we have an advantage because we were there first, or we were there with money, and et cetera. And I'm not going to have a lot of time here, but I would like for you to tell me what lessons have we learned from Iraq in terms of making sure that after the peace is achieved or after we've left or whatever the benchmark is, how do we make sure that we have a structural specific advantage that we can count on, and not do all of this stuff. And I was in Iraq in '06 before I got to Congress. Not just do all this stuff and leave and say, I hope we can compete now. We ought to be doing specific things to make sure that American companies have advantages after we've spent all this money. If you could comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, let me just say, since we've been talking about Central Asia, we're trying to do a lot. I mentioned how we're trying to promote business directly through trade missions and so forth. Another area is in the area of infrastructure development, and probably the biggest single infrastructure program is going to be this Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India gas pipeline. And a gas sales purchase agreement has now been signed between Afghanistan and Pakistan and Turkmenistan, the source of the gas. But the next step will now be to form a consortium. And we have strongly advocated on behalf of American companies who might be asked to lead this consortium. And would obviously be a very big deal for them and a very big source of revenue for them. So that's one example of how we're doing whatever we can to try to support American companies. But there are a lot of others as well. We've just got to.
Well, if I could interrupt, what I'm interested in is not whether we are using our soft power to say these are good companies. What I'm talking about is cutting deals that says, certainly there's national security money and what have you we're going to spend regardless, but that says, if we're going to give you this, then we're going to get this, where we have a guaranteed, not a hope for, but a guaranteed role in certain projects because of all we've done for them. And that's what I'm interested in.
Well, again, on the one hand, we certainly want to, we definitely want to support our companies, and we look for single source contracts wherever we can, and a lot of American companies are doing a lot of business right now like on the Ring Road in Afghanistan. An American company just won a several $100 million project there. But at the same time, we also we're consistently advocating for open markets and transparency and so forth, and so we've got to be also true to our values. Yeah. So we try to strike that balance. And yes, we want to support our companies, but our companies are ultimately going to succeed because they're the best and the most efficient, and they're going to benefit from an open system. Yeah. So it's really in our interest to promote that kind of an open, competitive system.
Yeah, if all countries, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's all right. We have another panel. I want to make sure that we get to them.